I said, get in the box! Time Fcuk is a game I've recently grown to utterly adore. Its presentation, themes, all intrigue me as a creative, and it's all done under an interesting gameplay concept. Time Fcuk was released onto Newgrounds by Edmund McMillan on September 16th, 2009. Its creation was inspired by his 10th high school reunion that he had recently just attended.
It was a very strange and depressing event. Lots of drinking, crying and sadness, mostly from people who never seem to progress past that high school mindset, most complaining about how they felt stuck in situations they weren't too happy with. The reunion was actually quite disturbing to me, and I grew a lot from it on Time Fcuk.
So with that, let's get started, shall we? The game opens with a cutscene showing our main character running through an area filled with other people. A great many seem to be drinking and generally seeming to be rather depressed. This leads us to the main menu, and I think this main menu does a phenomenal job setting the tone for the rest of the game. Time Fcuk features music from composer Justin Carpel, whose experimental style perfectly matched Time Fcuk's general feeling of isolation and self-reflection.
Justin did an amazing job at understanding the theme and totally nailing down a musical score that complemented it perfectly.
The game's main theme, Isolated Showers, is a strange track, featuring harsh static and clips from local radio broadcasts. Yet this track also plays into another one of the game's themes, perspective and shifting one's perspective.
William Good was a fan of the original Meat Boy and had been working on a platformer in Flash. It was a cool prototype, but the thing that really grabbed me was this weird switching layers mechanic he had added to it. I started to think more about multi-dimensional themes in games, like world, dark world, and perspective changes. I've been thinking a lot about perspective recently and how important it is to be able to see things from different sides. You can't learn anything in life if you believe there's always only one solution or one right answer. If you do, you will eventually find yourself stuck in a situation and break as a person.
This, combined with a broken set of speakers that picked up a local radio station frequency, led to the strange track that makes it feel like you're watching through the eyes of multiple different perspectives.
I was also able to pull from the radio theme and play around with the idea of tapping into realities that are all happening at once. Different existences that are parallel but can't be tapped into by changing your frequency or perspective.
Now let's look at the rest of the menu. And the thing I wish to point out is the small text next to each of these options that creates a small sentence.
Start taking action by finding flaws in yourself, then finding excuses not to fix them and laying down because you worked so hard. And hey, let's face it, life has no point. Create a state of being you no longer have any control over. Create an ego, drift divide between your past and current existence. Enter at your own risk. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results.
So already, we're building up a profile of this game's themes. loneliness, isolation, and looking at life under different perspectives. But are all these well represented in the story and gameplay? Well, let's actually start the game and see where this all goes. Clicking start, we get a cutscene of our character named Steven, running through a corridor before finding a box. Out of that box comes another Steven, who informs our Steven that they are us, just from 20 minutes into the future. This future Steven begs us to get inside the box at the risk of our entire existence. And after our Steven hesitates, future Steven forcefully pushes us inside, starting the main gameplay. The gameplay of Time Fcuk is that of a puzzle platformer. We control Steven moving through these levels in order to reach the goal. Simple enough, but then we have the game's main gimmick. Pressing the A button causes the entire level to change layers. This can cause certain level geometry and puzzle parts to disappear and reappear, and is used heavily throughout the game. I think the layer mechanic is incredibly cool, giving these small 2D levels an extra layer of depth that makes everything just a bit more complicated. This is of course combined with other elements like push boxes, portals, and gravity flipping arrows that are all slowly introduced as the levels progress. And while later levels do often leave me scratching my head, it's never to the point of frustration. And if you do feel rather annoyed at a certain puzzle, you're provided a means to skip to the next one. As you progress throughout the game, you'll occasionally get messages here on the right. These will be from past or future versions of Steven. Of course, some of them are either humorous, poking fun at the player for failing a puzzle, or talking about a puzzle element being introduced, but a few of them speak about Steven himself. Overall, they speak heavily on Steven's loneliness and isolation, speaking about their current predicament of being stuck in this box. After a while of all this, we soon finally reach the final puzzle. Another version of Steven begs us to take the cyanide pill used to restart a level, and to let him leave the box, as he believes only one of them can actually leave. So, now we have two choices. Take the pill, or don't. For now, fuck him. Go fuck yourself! He's asking us to kill ourselves? Hell no. Completing the puzzle is rather simple, and when we come face to face with ourselves, the two Stevens merge, and quickly grow from an infant into an adult. All before they blast high up into the sky and... here we are. Now we are the other Steven in the box, after having come back 20 minutes into the future to get our past self to get into the box. This cutscene plays out like the intro, but unlike it goes on for just a little longer after past Steven is pushed into the box. We begin running away, and dozens of other versions of Steven split off and also begin running with us. And with that, we get a credits screen. On the right is a story from Steven's childhood. When they were 4, they got a cardboard box and a black marker from their mother. They used that marker to draw in a make-believe world that they loved and preferred to than reality itself. When they were 10, they got a larger box and did the same. It was dark inside the box, and when they turned on the lights, they were surrounded by drawings of their future. They then asked for a new box and a marker. This is the correct ending, as the game calls it. Weird, I know, but bear with me as I discuss the other ending and delve a little more into the two endings. If we decide to chow down on the pill, Steven's head explodes as though the level is restarting. But then a second Steven pops out of the smouldering head. This one eats another pill, and his head explodes. And then another, and another for seemingly forever. The other Steven seen in this level is blasted upwards just like the other ending, and it plays out exactly like the correct ending. This is the wrong ending. Like with the correct ending, we get a message on the right, but rather than a personal story, this message remarks on the player's want for answers, regardless if they're told that what they're doing will give no answers, even after the game ends and the curtain falls. It also remarks on people's want for comfort in following the rules and instructions that others lay out for them, because it's simply easier than just taking a risk. And then finally asking us to stop reading this message before seemingly looping on itself. So, what the hell just happened? Why is there a right and a wrong if both endings have similar outcomes? Well, I think both of these endings are actually in service of the game's themes.
I wanted to write about a man who was at war with himself over his future. One side of him wanted enlightenment, the other wanted comfort. And that is essentially what Time Fcuk is all about.
It seemed really neat. It seemed super interesting. A lot of the themes of the game were centered around, I had my 10-year high school reunion. Kind of didn't want to go, because I wasn't a cool kid. And I get there, I left the Nintendo Power in the car. I get there and everybody was fucking wasted. Everybody was crying. It was terrible. People were really depressed. It was awful. And I remember thinking, like, all these people are so stuck in these boxes, these self-imposed boxes. And how weird it was that they're all the same people that they were. And then I started to look at myself and thinking, like, wait, am I stuck in this box too? Like, and I wanted to kind of write about that. I wanted to write about the idea of, like, self-imposed boxes when the door is right behind you. Like, you just have to turn around. Like, and the idea of changing perspectives and dimensions in a box, it just felt neat and interesting. And I contacted one of my best friends from high school, Justin Carpel, and I asked if he wanted to, he's a musician, I asked if he wanted to do music because it felt so appropriate if I could do music with my best friend from high school about this game that felt like it was from high school. Everything just worked so well, and I started to just write this really bizarre story about a character whose future self invites him into a box where he's trapped for all eternity, but the future self had to do that in order to get out of the box. And it's looping constantly. And that's why the text of the title is always, like, changing and stuff. And it's just an amalgamation of all those weird things that I had experienced about that time, and I really like the character design too.
Steven is a man who isolates himself, keeping himself in a box. But despite that, there is a way out. He can either confront himself, face his flaws, and grow from them, or he can refuse to learn. Either option does allow him to leave the box. The Steven copies splitting off, I think, is meant to show the options that Steven can now take following his journey into the box. This is slightly contradicted by the wrong ending, but this is all my own reasoning from just playing the game and observing both these endings. And there's likely some things I'm missing, but this is what I believe the endings and game as a whole represents. Now, in around 2012, Edmund released the Basement Collection, which features a few games Edmund created before Super Meat Boy. This, of course, including Time Fcuk, which was updated to include a Chapter 2. Chapter 2 follows Steven returning to the box, returning to his loneliness. Chapter 2 only features one ending. We find Steven's corpse, and merge with it, regressing into a baby-like state. This baby-like creature descends, and we soon cut to outside the box where we see a hideous amalgam of dozens of Stevens emerge from it. And with that, we reach the ending. The text this time is from a now dead Steven, informing the player, Steven, that leaving the box was a mistake, before telling us that when we stop reading this message, that we'll die. This is then followed by begging that they continue to write before it too is cut off. I think this dead Steven is meant to show the extreme results that staying in the box has. A big assumption I'm making here, but I think the whole when you stop reading this note you'll die thing is meant to be an allegory for suicide. The dead Steven we see here being a future version who returns to the box after leaving this first time. The first part of the message is from the dead Steven, but this final bit at the bottom is from the Steven we're playing, a past version, begging this other future Steven to keep writing and thusly keep living. This is a massive assumption, and I'm honestly probably wrong, but this is my assumption from playing the game. So that's Time Fcuk. An interesting puzzle game with a unique story and interesting themes of isolation, loneliness, and how some people become their own wardens in life, keeping themselves locked up in their own prisons or boxes in this instance. I like it, and I think if you like playing Edmund's other games like Super Meat Boy, Binding of Isaac, or Mugenics, you should give these games a try. Of course, there is the Basement Collection on Steam, but Time Fcuk is also available to play on Newgrounds, albeit without Chapter 2. So, why not give this game a try, and get in the box? I said, get in the box!